Chapter 1. The Beginning of a New Life. John had always thought that happiness could be found in money and material things. He worked hard at his job, always thinking about his next promotion, his next car, or the latest gadgets he could buy. Living in the busy city of New York, there was always something new and exciting to get. John's life was fast-paced. He had a good apartment in a nice part of town, he wore expensive clothes, and he ate at fancy restaurants every weekend. But something was missing. It was a warm summer day, and John was sitting by the window of his apartment, looking out at the city below. The streets were full of people, cars were honking, and life seemed to be moving at a fast pace. But as John sat there, he didn't feel the excitement that he used to feel. The city that once made him feel alive now seemed to be a place where everyone was rushing, but no one seemed to be truly happy. John sighed. "I have everything I ever wanted," he thought to himself. "I have a good job, money in the bank, and a comfortable life. So why do I feel like something's missing?" For the first time in a long while, John realized that he was not happy. He had been chasing after things, but these things didn't bring him real joy. His expensive apartment, his fancy clothes, and his gadgets, they were all nice, but they didn't fill the emptiness he felt inside. He thought about his life and began to wonder if there was more to happiness than just having things. John had a few friends, but he didn't spend much time with them. Everyone in New York seemed to be so busy with their own lives. When he wasn't working, John would often spend his time alone. He would go to a cafe, scroll through his phone, and watch movies at home. He thought this was normal. After all, everyone around him seemed to live the same way. But deep down, John felt lonely. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that money couldn't buy real happiness. That weekend, John decided to do something different. Instead of spending his Saturday at the mall or the latest trendy restaurant, he decided to visit Central Park. It was a place he hadn't been to in years. When he arrived at the park, he was surprised by how peaceful it was. Children were playing, people were jogging, and families were having picnics on the grass. It was a simple but beautiful scene. The fresh air, the green trees, and the sound of laughter made John feel more at ease than he had felt in a long time. As he walked through the park, John noticed a small community center near the edge of the park. It was a simple building with big windows. Curious, he walked up to it and saw a sign on the door that read, "Volunteers needed for community events." John had never thought about volunteering before. His job kept him busy, and he didn't know much about community events. But something inside him told him to go inside. When John stepped into the community center, he was greeted by a warm smile from a woman behind the front desk. She was an older woman with kind eyes, and she introduced herself as Mary, the director of the center. "Welcome to the community center," she said. "How can I help you today?" John felt a little nervous. He wasn't sure what to say. "I saw the sign outside," he said slowly. "It says you need volunteers. I've never volunteered before, but I'm interested in learning more." Mary's face lit up. "That's wonderful. We're always looking for new volunteers. There are many ways you can help. We organize events for families. We provide meals for the homeless, and we offer after-school programs for children." It's a great way to give back to the community." John nodded, still unsure of what to expect. "I've never done this kind of work before," he admitted. "But I feel like I want to do something different. I want to give back." Mary smiled again. "That's the best reason to start. It's not about having experience. It's about having the heart to help others. Why don't you come by tomorrow? We're hosting a family day event, and we could use some extra hands." John agreed, though he wasn't sure how he would fit in. The next day, he returned to the community center, ready to volunteer for the first time in his life. He arrived early, and Mary showed him around. The center was a simple but lively place, full of activity. There were rooms for kids to play, a kitchen where meals were being prepared, and a hall where events were held. As the family day event began, John was put in charge of helping set up tables and chairs. He also helped serve food to the families who came to the event. At first, John wasn't sure how he felt about doing such simple tasks. It was so different from his usual work in an office. But as the day went on, he found himself enjoying it more than he expected. He talked to families, helped kids with their games, and even made a few new friends among the other volunteers. One of the kids, a shy little girl named Lily, caught John's attention. She was about 7 years old, and she seemed nervous around the other children. While most of the kids were running around playing, Lily sat quietly by herself, holding a small stuffed animal. John noticed her sitting alone and decided to sit next to her. "Hey there," John said gently. "What's your name?" The girl looked up at him with big, curious eyes. "Lily," she said softly. "That's a beautiful name," John said with a smile. "Do you want to play with the other kids?" Lily shook her head. "I'm too shy," she whispered. John understood how she felt. He had always been a little shy himself, especially in new situations. "That's okay," he said. "You don't have to play if you don't want to. But if you change your mind, I'll be right here to help you." Lily smiled a little, and John felt a warmth in his heart that he hadn't felt in a long time. Throughout the day, he checked on her, and by the end of the event, she had started to join in the games with the other children. John felt proud, not just of Lily, but of himself for stepping out of his comfort zone. As the event came to an end, Mary thanked John for his help. "You did a great job today," she said. "The families really appreciated your kindness, and so did Lily." John smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment he hadn't felt in years. "It was a great experience," he said. "I didn't realize how much I would enjoy it." Mary nodded. That's the power of giving back. It not only helps others, but it also brings joy to your own life. You've made a difference today, John. As John walked home that evening, he couldn't stop thinking about the day. He had spent his life chasing after material things, but today he had found happiness in something much simpler: helping others. It wasn't the kind of happiness that came from buying something new or getting a promotion at work. It was a deeper, more meaningful kind of happiness. When he got home, John sat by the window again, looking out at the city. But this time, he didn't feel the same emptiness as before. He felt a sense of purpose, a feeling that he was on the right path. He knew that this was just the beginning of his journey. John continued to volunteer at the community center. Week after week, he found himself looking forward to the events and the people he met there. He helped with food drives, after-school programs, and community cleanup days. He got to know the families in the neighborhood, and he even started mentoring Lily. Over time, John realized that his life was changing. He no longer felt the need to chase after material things. He had found something much more valuable: connection, purpose, and real happiness. For the first time in a long while, John felt truly content. He understood now that happiness wasn't about having more. It was about giving more, sharing more, and connecting with the people around him. His life was no longer about what he could get for himself, but about what he could give to others. As the months passed, John continued to grow in his new role as a volunteer and a mentor. He learned that true happiness comes from within, and that the greatest joy in life comes from making a positive impact on the lives of others. And with that realization, John knew that he had finally found the real purpose of his life. Chapter 2: Building Connections. As the days turned into weeks, John found himself fully immersed in his volunteer work at the community center. Each day brought new experiences and challenges, but he welcomed them all. John had never realized how fulfilling it could be to help others. The center was not just a place where people came for assistance, it was a hub of laughter, friendship, and community spirit. One Saturday morning, John arrived at the center to help with a special event, a community picnic. Mary had organized it to bring families together and foster connections among neighbors. John was excited to be a part of this gathering. He arrived early to help set up, placing tables and chairs on the grassy area outside. The sun was shining, and there was a gentle breeze, making it a perfect day for a picnic. As he worked, John noticed the familiar faces of the children who came to the center. They were running around, playing tag and laughing. He spotted Lily, who was holding a colorful kite in her hands. She seemed eager to fly it, but was still a little shy. John decided to approach her. "Hey, Lily," John called out with a smile. "Are you going to fly that kite?" Lily looked up at him, her eyes brightening. "I want to, but I don't know how," she admitted, her voice soft. John knelt down beside her. "I can help you. Flying a kite is really fun. Would you like me to show you how?" Lily nodded eagerly. "Yes, please." John took the kite and showed her how to hold it properly. Together they ran a little way across the grassy field, and when the wind caught the kite, it lifted into the air. Lily's face lit up with joy as the kite danced in the sky. "Look, I did it," she shouted, her shyness fading away as she laughed and clapped her hands. "You did great, Lily," John encouraged her. "Now you try on your own." With a bit of hesitation, Lily took the kite and ran, her laughter echoing as the kite soared higher. John watched her with pride, feeling grateful for the opportunity to connect with her. As the picnic began, families gathered around tables filled with food, games, and activities. There were sandwiches, fruits, and colorful drinks. John helped serve food and ensure everyone was happy. He enjoyed talking with the families and hearing their stories. They shared laughs and smiles, and John felt a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. At one point during the picnic, Mary gathered everyone for a group activity. "Let's play a game," she announced. "How about a sack race?" The children cheered, and even some of the parents seemed eager to join. John volunteered to help organize the race, dividing the participants into 2 teams. As they lined up, the excitement in the air was palpable. John demonstrated how to get into the sacks, and then the race began. Laughter filled the park as children and adults hopped in their sacks, trying to reach the finish line. John found himself laughing uncontrollably as a little boy tripped and fell, tumbling into a heap but getting up with a huge smile. "Come on, you can do it," John cheered, encouraging everyone as they raced. The joy in their faces made John feel incredibly happy. He was part of something wonderful, something meaningful. After the race, everyone gathered for a group photo. John stood with Lily and the other kids, their faces beaming with happiness. As they posed together, John realized that he was creating lasting memories, moments filled with laughter and friendship. As the day came to a close, families began to pack up their things. John felt a sense of satisfaction watching everyone leave with smiles on their faces. He helped clean up the picnic area, putting away chairs and tables with the other volunteers. "Today was a success," Mary said, wiping her forehead with a smile. "Thank you, John, for your hard work. You really made a difference today." John smiled back, feeling proud of what they had accomplished together. "I had a great time. Thank you for letting me be a part of it." On his way home, John thought about the day. He realized that he had made connections with people he had never met before. He felt a sense of community and belonging that he had missed for so long. His heart was full of gratitude. As the weeks continued, John found himself looking forward to each event at the community center. He became more involved, helping with planning, organizing activities, and supporting Mary in her efforts to bring the community together. Through his work, John developed friendships with other volunteers, and they began to feel like family. They shared their own stories, dreams, and challenges. John discovered that everyone had their own struggles, and many of them found joy in helping others, just like he did. One day, while preparing for an upcoming fundraising event, John struck up a conversation with another volunteer named David. David was a retired teacher who had a passion for gardening. "I've been thinking about starting a community garden," he said. "It could be a place for people to grow their own vegetables and herbs. What do you think?" John's eyes lit up at the idea. "That sounds amazing. A garden could bring people together and provide fresh food for families. I'd love to help with that." David nodded, pleased to have someone enthusiastic on board. "Great. We can start planning it at the next meeting." The idea of the community garden inspired John. He began to see the potential for creating a space where people could come together, share knowledge, and grow not only plants but also relationships. The garden would be a symbol of their hard work and unity. As John continued to volunteer, he noticed a change within himself. He was becoming more patient, kind, and understanding. He learned the importance of listening and supporting others. The more he helped, the more he realized that true happiness comes from the connections we make and the love we share. One Saturday afternoon, After a long day of volunteering, John returned home and sat by the window again. He looked out at the city, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. He remembered the laughter, the joy, and the sense of community he had experienced. It was a stark contrast to the emptiness he had felt before. He pulled out a notebook and began to write down his thoughts. He wrote about his journey so far, the people he had met, and the lessons he had learned. He wrote about Lily, David, and Mary, and how they had all impacted his life in different ways. For the first time in a long while, John felt excited about the future. He had discovered a passion for helping others, and he wanted to continue on this path. He realized that he had been searching for happiness in all the wrong places, and now he finally understood that true happiness came from giving and connecting with others. As the sun began to set, John made a promise to himself. He would continue to volunteer and support the community center. He would work with David to create the community garden, and he would do everything he could to spread joy and kindness to those around him. He knew that this was just the beginning of a beautiful journey, one filled with love, connection, and real happiness. Chapter 3. The Garden Project Begins. As the days turned into weeks, John's excitement about the community garden project grew. He could hardly wait for the upcoming meeting where he and David would share their ideas with the other volunteers. The thought of creating a vibrant space for the community filled him with energy and purpose. The day of the meeting arrived, and John felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. He arrived early, eager to set up the room and ensure everything was ready. When the other volunteers started to arrive, they greeted him with smiles, and John felt a sense of belonging wash over him. Mary, the organizer of the community center, stood at the front of the room. "Thank you all for coming today. We have an exciting project to discuss," she announced, her voice filled with enthusiasm. "As many of you know, we've been talking about starting a community garden, and I'm thrilled to introduce David and John, who will lead the project." John felt his heart race as everyone turned to look at him and David. David smiled reassuringly, and John took a deep breath before speaking. "Hi, everyone. I'm really excited about this garden," John began, trying to keep his voice steady. "We believe it can be a wonderful place for people in the community to come together, grow their own food, and learn from each other." David added, "We want the garden to be a space where everyone feels welcome, regardless of their experience with gardening. We can hold workshops, share tips, and even have community events." The volunteers nodded, and a few began to murmur their approval. John's confidence grew as he saw their interest. "Let's start by discussing where we want to place the garden," David suggested. "We need an area with enough sunlight and space for planting. Does anyone have ideas?" A woman named Sarah spoke up. "What about the empty lot behind the center? It gets plenty of sunlight, and it's close for everyone to access." "That's a great idea," John replied, feeling a rush of excitement. "We can clean up that lot and turn it into something beautiful." Another volunteer, Tom, chimed in, "I can help with the cleanup. I have some tools we can use." The meeting continued with discussions about the garden's layout, types of plants, and potential challenges. Ideas flowed freely, and everyone seemed eager to contribute. John felt the energy in the room building, and it reminded him of the joy he experienced during the picnic. This project had the power to bring the community together, just like that day. After the meeting, John, David, and a few other volunteers decided to visit the empty lot to see what they were working with. When they arrived, they were met with a sight that was both daunting and hopeful. The lot was overgrown with weeds, trash littered the ground, and old bricks were scattered about. "This is going to take some work," John said, looking around. "Yes, but it has great potential," David replied, already imagining the garden that could flourish in the space. "We'll need to gather more volunteers for the cleanup, and we can plan a community day for everyone to pitch in." As they walked around the lot, the group began to visualize the garden's layout. They discussed which areas would be perfect for vegetable patches, flower beds, and perhaps even a small gathering space for community events. John could already picture families planting seeds together, children laughing as they played, and neighbors sharing stories. With a plan forming, they returned to the community center, ready to spread the word about their vision. John took it upon himself to create flyers to share in the neighborhood. He wrote about the community garden project, the cleanup day, and how everyone could be involved. "Let's post these around the neighborhood and online," John suggested to David. "We can use social media to reach even more people." David agreed, impressed with John's enthusiasm. Together, they distributed the flyers, and soon the buzz about the garden began to spread. People started to express their interest, and soon they had a group of volunteers ready to join them for the cleanup. The day of the cleanup arrived, and John woke up early, filled with excitement. He gathered his gardening gloves, a hat, and a big bottle of water. When he arrived at the lot, he was thrilled to see many community members waiting. Families, children, and even some seniors showed up, ready to roll up their sleeves and work together. "Thank you all for coming," John called out, waving to the crowd. "Today, we'll transform this space into something beautiful." As they began the work, laughter and chatter filled the air. People teamed up, tackling different areas of the lot. Some pulled weeds, while others picked up trash and cleared the debris. John worked alongside Lily and her mother, who had brought a pair of gardening gloves for Lily. "Look at all this trash," Lily exclaimed, holding up a plastic bottle. "We can make this place nice." John smiled, impressed by her enthusiasm. "Yes, we can. You're doing a great job, Lily." With everyone working together, the lot slowly transformed. By lunchtime, they had made significant progress. They took a break under the shade of a nearby tree, enjoying sandwiches and refreshments brought by the volunteers. As they ate, John felt a sense of community like he had never experienced before. People were sharing stories, laughing, and making new friends. He realized that the garden was not just about growing plants, it was about growing connections. After lunch, they returned to work with renewed energy. They spent the afternoon digging, planting, and creating a vision for the garden. With each passing hour, the lot transformed from a neglected space into a thriving community project. As the sun began to set, John stood back to admire their hard work. The lot looked vastly different than it had in the morning. They had cleared the debris, tilled the soil, and even planted some flower seeds along the edges. John felt a deep sense of satisfaction in his heart. "Look what we did today," he said to the group, beaming with pride. "This is just the beginning." David clapped John on the back. "You did an amazing job bringing everyone together, John. I'm so proud of what we accomplished." As they packed up their things, John noticed Lily still planting seeds in a small section they had reserved for flowers. He walked over to her, squatting down beside her. "Do you know what flowers you planted?" he asked gently. Lily looked up, her face lit up with excitement. "I think these will be daisies. They're my favorite." "They will look beautiful here," John said, imagining the vibrant colors blooming in the garden. "You know, you're going to be a great gardener one day, Lily." She giggled, her cheeks turning pink. "Thanks. I like planting." That moment struck a chord in John's heart. He realized that this garden was going to impact not just the adults, but the children as well. It would be a place for them to learn, grow, and create memories that would last a lifetime. As they wrapped up for the day, John felt a deep sense of gratitude for the community he had become a part of. He reflected on his journey from feeling lonely and lost to finding purpose and connection. The garden project had become a beacon of hope and joy, not just for him but for everyone involved. On his way home, John couldn't help but smile. He had discovered a new passion for helping others, and he felt determined to keep building connections within his community. This was just the beginning of a beautiful journey, and he couldn't wait to see what lay ahead. Chapter 4. A Garden of Hope. After weeks of hard work, the garden was almost complete. The lot that had once been forgotten was now alive with color and life. Every weekend, volunteers came to plant flowers, vegetables, and even small trees. There were benches to sit on, pathways to walk through, and spaces where kids could play and learn. It had become a true community garden, a place where everyone came together. John looked around the garden one morning, amazed at what they had built. It was so much more than just a project now. It had turned into something that brought people closer. Neighbors who barely spoke to each other were now working side by side, planting and laughing together. It was incredible to see the transformation, not just of the space, but of the people. One sunny afternoon, Mary came over to John while he was watering some plants. She had a bright smile on her face. "John, I've got some exciting news," she said. John stopped what he was doing and turned to her, curious. "What is it?" "The community center board loved the garden so much, they want to host a big event here," Mary explained, her eyes lighting up. "We're going to have a celebration to officially open the garden. There will be food, music, and tours of the garden. It's going to be a wonderful way to bring everyone together." John's face broke into a wide grin. "That's a fantastic idea. The garden has come such a long way, and it would be amazing to celebrate all the hard work everyone's put into it." For the next 2 weeks, John and the other volunteers worked even harder to make sure everything was perfect for the event. They planted the last few patches of flowers, tidied up the paths, and even added a beautiful wooden sign at the entrance that read, "The Garden of Hope." It was the perfect name, as the garden had truly become a symbol of hope for the community. The day of the grand opening finally arrived. The weather couldn't have been more perfect, sunny with a gentle breeze. Families started arriving early, eager to see the garden and take part in the celebration. The air was filled with the smell of freshly baked goods, and a local band played soft music in the background. John felt a mixture of pride and happiness as he watched the crowd gather. The garden was alive with laughter, conversations, and children running around, exploring every corner. It was exactly how he had always imagined it would be, a peaceful, joyful place for everyone. As the event began, Mary handed John a microphone. "John, you've been the heart and soul of this project. Would you like to say a few words?" John wasn't much of a public speaker, but today he felt a deep sense of gratitude that made him want to share his thoughts. He took the microphone and looked out at the crowd. "I just want to thank everyone for being a part of this. This garden started as a small idea, but it has grown into something so much bigger because of all of you." The crowd clapped, and John continued. "This garden isn't just about plants and flowers, it's about community. It's about coming together, helping each other, and creating something beautiful. It's a place where we can all slow down, breathe, and enjoy the simple things in life." He paused for a moment, looking around at the smiling faces. "I hope this garden continues to grow, just like the friendships and connections we've made along the way. This is our garden, a place of hope and peace." The applause that followed was warm and genuine, and John felt his heart swell with pride and happiness. As the day went on, people wandered through the garden, admiring the work that had been done. They picked fresh vegetables from the patches, smelled the flowers, and sat on the benches, soaking in the peaceful atmosphere. Lily was especially excited, running from one part of the garden to another, showing her friends the plants she had helped take care of. She had grown so much over the past few months, not just in her gardening skills, but in her confidence. The garden had given her, and many others, a sense of purpose and belonging. As the sun began to set and the event started to wind down, John found himself sitting on one of the new benches, watching the last of the families leave. David, one of the volunteers who had been with him from the beginning, sat down beside him. "You did it, John," David said, handing him a cold drink. "This garden is something special." John smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. "We all did it. This wouldn't have been possible without everyone's help." David nodded, looking around the garden. "It's amazing to see how far it's come. And it's not just the garden, it's the people. I feel like the neighborhood is closer now because of this." John agreed. "It's true. It's like the garden has brought out the best in everyone. It's given people a reason to come together, to talk, to help each other. It's more than just plants and flowers. It's about community." As the last rays of sunlight touched the garden, casting a warm glow over the plants and pathways, John felt a deep sense of peace. This garden, this community, had become something far greater than he ever imagined. It was a place of hope, friendship, and new beginnings. With one last look around, John stood up, feeling grateful for the journey that had brought him to this moment. The garden would continue to grow, just as the bonds within the community would. And as he walked away, He knew that this was only the beginning of many more beautiful moments to come. The end.